Hi guys, welcome to Zero Chills TV. Today, as you can see, ngojeni kwanza nivae shati because I'm hosting a creative director. This was not a stunt. Respect authority. Ndio nisifutwe kazi. Unajua pia promotions and nini, it's December. Like kuata kwa bocha. Today we are hosting Allan Mwaniki, creative head Scanner Uganda. We are working with him in Kenya before he left us for banana pasture. And yeah, hope to have a good conversation. So Allan, welcome. Tell us something that people do not know about you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ash. Easy reads, low-hanging fruit. I'm left-handed. I don't think even you knew that about me. And you are my deski at one point.
Yeah.
Before I dragged my way to the top.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, super. Yeah, man. I'm left-handed. In another life, I would have become a professional golfer.
Yeah.
I love singing in the shower. And yeah, man. 3 fun facts. Quick fire.
Yeah. You have not told them that that is not a cave, that you actually live in civilization. That's just how the rich people live.
They say with rich people, the poorer it looks, the more expensive things are, man. Kanye West taught us this.
Yes.
But that is not the case here. I'm in the village, going back to my roots, man.
Back to your roots. Now, you started in Kenya and right now you are the creative head for Scanner Uganda. Run us through your journey.
Run through my journey. Hi, Ash, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Run us through your journey.
Oh, my journey. So I think like most creatives, I stumbled upon the whole creative industry. I know very few people who actually studied to become creatives, especially as writers, and even designers as well. A lot of people stumble into it, and that's exactly like me. I mean, the short story is I had a friend who was in an agency, and like every Kenyan, I was hustling. I think I had business plans. So my hustle at one point was like writing business plans. But then now this friend of mine was like, oh, this plan, this business plan is actually, I don't like the business idea, but I like the business plan because it's well written. So I was like, okay, so then. So she's like, yeah, you can get paid to do like things like this, to actually write things. So I'm like, yeah, show me where, I'll shoot my shot. And basically I went to an agency and they said, you know what, do you have any like examples of what you've written, if you see. And it was fake it till you make it. I kind of put together like a portfolio. They interrogated me in the interview, made me feel trash because I really was trash and I never knew anything. But yeah, I think they took me in on like, okay, this guy has potential. And from there I just learned on the job and slowly won my way through the creative industry. From radio stations to, I think getting into an agency was the most exciting big break because I found out that's where I really wanted to be because I like not just the writing bit, but also like the whole idea thing and conceptualization. And I think even all of us, a lot of us, when we're kids, you always have that thing of when you see, you've always seen ads and they've always been in our consciousness. So I always had this curiosity of like, who did that? And a point of view on adverts. And then slowly you find out it's a whole industry where you can actually make a career and wear jeans every day to work to go and come up with good ideas and execute them. Yeah, so in a nutshell, that's the journey I took.
Amazing. What would you say has been your biggest highlight up to now?
My biggest highlight up to now. Um, I think for me it was there's just a streak at Scanad when I think it was 2018, it was 2020. Yeah, mid 2018 to 2019. We had a really good run, in terms of winning pitches, and it just taught me the value of teamwork. Because you see, individuals have bad days. Any legendary creative will have a bad day, but then teams, if you have a team of people who support each other and who carry the weight for each other, then you'll never have a bad day. And I saw that in action, in terms of day-to-day work and in terms of actually I think we won 99% of the pitches we did. Um, and for me, I learned to look beyond myself as an individual creative and just see the bigger picture of, ideas do not live in isolation or the mind of one person. So it's going to be nudged along by the team. So I think it was a process for me, and that was the most exciting process.
Yes.
I don't think any one accolade or any one job or any one script. For me, it was just having that light bulb moment of the bigger picture.
Yeah. But essentially you are, just that you say like nobody, there's no creative school for advertising, and essentially you're a banking guy, from our intelligence. You did banking in campus, and
Yeah.
those are two words. In fact, banking is so rigorous and one-sided, but creativity is all over the place. How then do you manage it? Or the degree was for your folks?
Oh yeah, yeah. If I finished that degree, I handed it over. I said, "Congrats, you guys did well." I gave them the degree. Um,
Yeah.
I fully wanted to get into banking, but then I think I was um, the older I get, I just became true and truer to my personality and my skill set, and I realized that my skills just also don't lie in that space, because it's a very analytical, very routine, very technical job. And yeah, it was just nice to have that honesty with myself, because for a while there I was clueless. And I think that's the thing, everyone has that the wilderness years where you're like, oh, your intuition tells you that whatever you're doing isn't right for you, and you kind of have to like feel around in the dark, and then eventually I think things work out. You just learned out to trial and error, and just having I guess it's a bit of luck, definitely, and a bit of, almost naive confidence to just go in the direction you feel like you're being pulled in. Yeah, man. I was very happy to walk away from that banking story. Very, very happy. Okay, maybe not now because I'll be rich. I'll be very rich, but it's okay.
Uh, from
Yeah.
statistics, no, no, without from. But you said something when you say that banking is very analytical. But having gone through your LinkedIn, you're also very analytical based on the posts that you share and what you talk about when it comes to advertising and all about that strategy. Won't you say that at least some of that education is helping you now?
Well, I mean, if you want me to be your bank, I can keep your money. You can give it to me to keep for you. If you think I'm analytical and trustworthy, that's fantastic. But then, yeah, I think if you think about it, advertising itself isn't just, and I think also TV shows and everything. Mad Men, made it seem like it's just a bunch of guys in a room drinking at 2 p.m. and having like flashes of brilliance. But even strategy in itself, and I think every creative along the way needs to learn how to, because at the end of the day, we're selling things. So there is that business side of it. So I think you also learn to start or tap in to that analytical, strategic starting point, because everything, okay, most products need a sense of, you need to land it somewhere. You need to have a foundation. Whether it's a business case or an insight or whatever it is. So it needs a bit of an analytical mind. And then after that, we take that leap to now, whatever our creative idea is.
Mm. I remember some time back you were pitching some, crazy ideas, and there was a time you were having some banter with some guy talking about how you know clients just make strategy that fits within themselves rather than that targets the consumer. What is your opinion on the modern day strategy that we make in advertising industries today?
That's the thing. Like super boardroom strategy, and I think that a lot of the time we get so stuck in the business aspect of the strategic part that we even lose the insight or lose that touch or magic that comes from understanding consumers. So even by the time we take that leap to creative, there's no heartbeat, there's no pulse, there's no magic, because it's also we've almost beaten it to death with that like thinker's hat. So there's nothing, there's no freshness, there's no new input. We just another time you end up going back to familiar territory. And that's the thing. I think strategy in itself has a creative aspect. I think a lot of the best campaigns in the world, even before they got to the creative, if you look at like say off the top of my head, like Snickers, you're not you, you are not you when you're hungry. That came, 90% of the work was done by the strategy. The rest was just executing it from there almost follows, and year after year they've just found new ways to execute it. um, but if you look at I actually like going back and looking at even Made of Black, Made of More, Guinness, and when you actually see that, oh, these guys thought about their product, but then they also um, they took their time to dig for strategy that actually opens up a whole new territory. So they, it wasn't just, oh, this is what we're familiar with, this is what we know, and therefore we want to see this in the communication. They were confident enough to like find a unfamiliar, almost scary territory from which now fresh creative flows. So yeah, shout out to Zomo holding it down, strategy at Canada, and all the strategists I know. I think it's a very underrated job. I really do, because if you have a good strategic plan on your team, it just really helps with the heavy lifting for the creative team and everything, and even
Mm.
like for the business as well.
Don't you think maybe the strategic partner should be also, from the creative side, or they have to have gone and learned about strategy in school themselves? Don't you feel like there's always that disconnect between the strategy guy and the creative side? They come together to mesh the ideas. You feel like one is tagging against the other.
Panel beating, and that's the thing. I think it's because there's this lack of trust, truth be told, and a lot of times it's like we go in separate directions, and then we come back at the end and say, let's puzzle this together. I think a lot of that is due to time as well, because a lot of the stuff is rushed and there isn't. We don't give the strategic department enough time to germinate a good idea. Um, but I don't know. I actually think planners should be a role on their own, because I think especially early in our careers as creatives, I think you should be left to think wild, go all out, and then your CD or whoever along the way you're taught how to now structure that thought. But now if we're all taught to, I worked at an agency once, and their titles actually, funny enough, you mentioned it. They used to have, they used to call them creative strategists. So even implied in the name, they used to expect their creatives to almost package the thinking, the sell, the all of that part, and then they also do the work. But I don't know. Like I feel like no, split them. Let strategists. I think in the beginning they should actually bounce off each other for sure. But then I don't think the roles should be merged. I think they're kind of different skill sets.
Okay. There's something that I think, you said that we should let creatives think, wild and free. But in today's fast-paced world, it's not the person who thinks largest is the person who thinks fastest. Yeah. There's a
Mm.
disconnect between how much work we're producing and how fast are we producing this work. So how then can a creative think free and yet the timelines on a job, it's like I've given you this brief today. By evening, we need this work out. How then do you advise a creative to start thinking?
I feel like this is a subtweet to the organization you work for.
No, 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 no.
In subtweet sense. Yeah, so what is the question in terms of how does a creative manage that disconnect? And
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's unfortunately it's the reality of the times we live in, especially because especially like on social media and the digital landscape, even the cycle of ideas is just so fast in terms of even how long they live online.
Mm.
So it is unfortunate. If it's I've had this conversation, I have it like so often, because ideally you have a system that buys, especially for bigger campaigns, that will stand and say, no, 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 guys, we'll deliver you good work, but we need time to do it. And it's very idealistic. I know of one agency who does that, and they really push back and say, oh, no, 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 for this scale of campaign, we want 3 months or we want 1 month. If you don't have your system working for you, then once again it comes to that whole teamwork thing. Don't be afraid to like tag team with other people, ask for as much help as you can get. because when you're thinking about all those deadlines and timelines alone, it becomes lonely and it gets tiring, and it even gets like it's yeah, it's scary trying to figure out where am I going to get, because there's a certain the ideas have to be great no matter what, and the timeline isn't meaning it isn't correlated to the quality of ideas clients and the agency expect. So it's a tension that's always gonna be there. I think moving forward is just the reality of our times. So you just have to, don't be afraid to ask for help. And I also think creatives have an issue in terms of communicating. Often we're scared to like stand our ground and just say, honestly, I need this time, and then once we just agree to the initial timeline or whatever, from there it's a slippery slope. We miss one deadline, we miss another deadline, we have no limit to stand on. So between communicating with your client service people on your team very well, unless it's like a hard pitch deadline, and then just really looping in people, getting help. Don't sit on the job too long. Uh, you get an idea, bounce it off your partner, your CD quickly, because I feel like creative is like they use the word in design thinking. It's iterative. How many projects or pitches have you done where the first idea sails through? Even if you feel like you have a really good idea, usually
Yeah.
it lands somewhere and then it pivots slightly and then it sort of evolves through the reviews and everything, and it just morphs into something else. You may even have an idea that fits a strategy and sounds so good, but you put it on paper and then you stumble upon another version of that idea that fits better. So yeah, get it out there quickly, let it get shot down or build from there, and then you just move.
What I'm getting is that you don't then believe that there's such a thing as creative block, which is just an excuse now for people not to do the work.
Yeah, more and more. Actually, that's a the longer like the longer I work, and maybe it's a thing that comes with experience. But then, yeah, I think just just get something out there that feels right, and then with each iteration you get warmer and warmer. Um, there's definitely a thing as creative block, but what's the famous quote about the secret to writing is just or any writing in brackets ideas is just keep your ass in the chair, man. Write something on that blank sheet of paper, it's there, then just keep on molding it.
Just molding it. But eventually, in as much as you tell someone, for instance, you have to keep on writing, you have to keep on thinking. But like you said, some ideas come to you when you're inspired. Shouldn't you then just, like ask the company, pay for me a whole day to Mombasa, let me, the music will come. Just give me my timelines. Like, if you want this in a week, okay, fine, I need a week's leave. I go sit somewhere and the music will come. As a creative head, don't you think that's a good idea?
I mean, I'm fully for it, man. Truth be told, and I think this COVID time has brought us that leeway, because I don't like your mate. I used to have some of my best ideas on the toilet seat. I'd even go, when when the pressure's on,
I
literally,
know.
and come back with zingers of ideas. That would literally be my thing. It's ridiculous, but I don't know why. Um, I mean, as we speak, I am a country, but yeah, I'm still working. I'm exposed to different influences, different inputs, so I'm fully for it. Especially now, this is the time to experiment with things like that. I know quite a few people who've used this time to work from coast, to work from up country, to work from because truth be told, yeah, if you're not doing physical meetings, I could be asked where you are. As long as you're available and you have internet, now's the time to see if it works for you. If it's valid, because I've experimented with it and it does work. Yeah, fully here for it.
Which
We
did
used to
you?
let me and I think just to add to that,
Yes,
we used to work at KT. I remember working on KTB at Ogilvy, and
yes.
we had a senior art director colleague, and he was like in the center of the account, and he used to do a lot of work. But then we used to ask our client, now this chap who lives in Zimmerman, he goes from Kilimani to Zimmerman every day. You have him sent around Kenya, and you expect him to chuck brilliant campaigns about the country. Like, you know what I mean, man? Like, give the guy a chance to do amazing work for you, and you'd be surprised what happens. The more input you have, the better input you have, I guess the better output.
Great. That is quite amazing because now that leads me even to a follow-up question. Which do you think the traditional, or rather, let me not say traditional. Do you think the agency model is changing? Forget COVID times and the current situation that we are in as a country and as the world, but just from the way things have been happening of late, and I'm sure because out of the number of years you have in the industry, do you then think that the agency model as we have come to know it is changing, and what is it changing to, if at all it's changing?
There are two things, you see, because I feel like this is a conversation that happens, every year. Someone will beat that drum. These the ad weeks of the world will beat that drum and say,
Yes.
advertising is dead, the agency
Yeah.
model is changing,
Yes.
and you see, I don't know if like it's changing. Like essentially, I don't think it's changing. I think it's spinning off into, it has different components that are being incorporated into it, but I can't say at the heart of it is, there's a silver bullet of, oh, the whole thing has changed into X. It's still always going to be about great ideas. It's still always going to be about good execution to match those great ideas. Um, and I think when you start looking at the heart of it for any medium, whether it's experiential, digital, because you see, at the end of the day, digital is still a medium. Yeah.
Yes.
You still need whatever, like even if it's direct promotion and mail. It's always the good ideas, the good concepts, the groundbreaking strategy, and fantastic executions that stand out. So I've never really, okay, at one point I had that, sort of panic of, oh my God, it's all digital now. It's all, where do I lie? Do I have to like make a significant shift? But I think idea is always going to be king, man. I can't say the model is changing. I would say there's certain preferences and shifts, especially in terms of the client agency relationship. And I like that, the small man, the Davids of this world, like the smaller, that you can punch above your weight as a small agency in this day and age. You don't have to have the scale that the legacy agency model had. And clients are starting to appreciate that. So you get that whole project basis thing. It opens up opportunities for smaller guys who are really good at what they do and just never had voice because they never had the credibility of your masthead agencies. um, so I like that. It's becoming more democratic for sure. I think that's really exciting. But in terms of is that thing about the model, no man, I can't. At its heart, I don't think so.
Mm. The idea will always remain king, and the Davids of this world now have a chance, at their claim to glory. Like, you know, especially because we are now, when you're talking about how agencies or rather clients are, fighting for the digital space. And I think there was this rush to get into it without really understanding. Because most of the time when I do a deep stick research and talk to people, we're always saying digital is social media. Social media is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, especially in Kenya. Which you
Right?
reminded me, which you reminded me that you're not part of it, yeah? You're no longer part of the
Yeah, I
craze
mean
of
that.
media.
Shout out my fellow slay queens. I'm sorry, I had to bow out.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us a chance, to fight for these Lake Queens. So from me to you,
I'll give you my handover notes, open files, and everything.
you tell me something now about digital marketing and where we are getting it wrong. Because a lot of times and I'm not confessing that I pitch to clients, I don't do that. I do not do that. But when I pitch to clients, they will tell me, so we
Yeah.
need digital marketing. We need Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Or most of the time, just Facebook and Instagram. What are we not getting right? What are we not understanding about digital advertising?
Yeah, I literally can't add much to that because, even in itself, between the media conversation,
Yeah.
the digital media conversation, then your actual owned assets, and then, yeah, you're right. Clients use a lot of, it literally, they mean, you know, social media pages to mean digital. And the fact that it's so much more than that in terms of you can even literally have your whole your business transformation in terms of a lot of your business channels can happen online. I feel like that isolating and using the term, the terms interchangeably, digital for social, for social media, for Facebook, for whatever. No, because I know some agencies who are really good with social media alone, and then others who are really good with the media buying bit, and others who are really good with sort of complex online platforms, that actually become integrated into your business. And I think, I'd even rather start with an agency that can look at your business holistically and say, okay, fine. You see, when you get online, so even like take a zoom out of it and say, fine, when you get online, now what are you doing? What's your strategy once again? What do you want to incorporate into how you approach your customers, your brand, etc. So now you have your mediums, you have your media, so your media budget to spend on the mediums, and then you also now need to think about your own assets. Are you incorporating that into how incorporated that is that into your business model, etc. Um, so on and so forth. So I feel like people are very, as you like, there's a big lack of understanding, and people want shortcuts. People definitely want shortcuts and do not want to invest. So then you see, I think it's coming full circle in a lot of clients. You can even dive a bit deeper and talk about the whole influencer conversation. But I think a lot of clients are not seeing, when they got infatuated to do that whole numbers thing. What are your, how many followers do you have, etc. And then when it turned on its head, and now it's about like engagement, because engagement takes work. You need to have quality content. You need to you need to boost your content. Yeah, so that's investment, that's time, that's you're paying an agency to do thinking, uh, and then even beyond that, it's like how you converting it. To convert it, you probably now need a website that works, or you need a sort of system that now drives that towards something, whether it's online, even if it's as granular as uh, CVMs. How does that whole funnel work? Yeah, I think without being thorough, then there's a lot of wasted resources and time on so-called digital and online.
Okay. I remember some time back when you're having this, I think it was Film Lab, with a beautiful panel of Ugandans there. And there were some
Yes, yes.
valid points, yeah, yeah. Pass my regards to you know who. But there are some beautiful points that you guys raised, and I was particularly intrigued by, primarily East Africa, especially. I'm very big on Facebook, and most of our clients, you know, as long as you have a social media page, you are good to go. And when you say that engagement is not enough, you also need quality content. Now, how then do you define quality content when, say, for instance, a client has come, I do this for my people, but I want you to post twice a week, So I post, but when it comes to engagement levels, for instance, if you take a case study of Safaricom and we see how they engage with their users online, all the memes they post, where's the line? Sometimes I tend to struggle with where's the line between advertising and becoming just, part of the conversation online.
Mm. And I think when you look at your content strategy, I think you need to have a balance, because for your content to just have a human touch and be interesting to people, in itself it needs to a lot of the time plain old advertising will not do that. If you can get that balance and really strike a chord between content that actually entertains, informs, connects, as well as get your sell in there, then brilliant. And also I think it's a brand to it's case by case depending on your brand, because obviously it comes easier for some brands than it does for others, just because of how some brands are packaged and position themselves. They have to dig, they have to dig deeper to now have a credible and engaging voice online. So yeah, it really depends. I think balance is ideal, um,
Mm.
but now it's case by case.
Okay. Now, when the last time we had a copywriter here, and I'm glad that your background is in copy, because most creative directors, their background is in ad, art
I
direction.
beg to I beg to this thing kills me because and every agencies I've worked for it's hilarious when now an account manager will come and say oh yeah, so guys, have you briefed the creative? So they'll refer to art people as the creative, or
Yeah,
yeah, XYZ is the creative on this. But then often that term isn't applied to copywriters, and it's I mean, yeah, solidarity forever, man. You
we
see
need
whether
a
you
union.
are,
We need a
yeah,
copywriters union, because we are
man, we need
taken for
the
granted. Yeah, we don't feel loved in these agencies.
union. Yeah,
But
no, sorry, I cut you off. I cut you off. You're asking me about yeah. So you're asking.
yeah, I was asking about, now, as a copywriter, now that you're a creative head, sometimes as a copywriter, because a lot of the questions that we get from young upcoming copywriters, we never say upcoming, because once you're upcoming, you never remember what you told me.
It's a
You will never
lifetime.
get
It's a lifetime calling.
upcoming. You always be upcoming. So as young, most of the time, what we struggle with is voice. Should it be my voice? Like we used to say, when I see an ad, that has to be Alan's ad, because we know how you write. But
Yeah.
where does the copywriter's voice come in, and where does the brand voice start?
Yeah. So okay, I think the first thing, and I wish I learned this sooner. Um, I wish I trusted the process more because earlier on in my career I really wanted to back and really get my voice out there without knowing the fundamentals. Um, so now my strong opinion is once you learn the fundamentals, then your voice shines through even better, and you can now kind of be versatile because they say a good copywriter needs to almost have multiple personalities in that you can adapt to different voices. But within that, the truth is you'll have everyone has their strengths. uh, Different people will just speak for different brands better than some people, just depending on your background, um, your background, your point of view, your whatever. So when you combine now someone's unique strength, I think we had one of our bosses who you would know, he'd just be like, oh, Ash, you're the guy for this because not you do all the ads, but there's certain jobs, and when you start to now combine someone's strength with their voice and that versatility, I think that's when you get a truly like great creative who can make their mark, as opposed to now a one-trick pony where every ad you do, almost whether it's for tampons or beer or Ken Poly chairs, every ad you do just has
Yeah.
just has a really strong mark of you that even overrides the brand. I don't think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yes, I get you. I remember the popular brand in Kenya, names withheld, which, if there's no dancing scene, that ad is not an ad.
And the thing is, uh, people recognize these things. Consumers recognize these things. I mean, and especially now when you combine that with brand managers or clients who don't want to change. Yeah, there's also another popular brand, and one of my friends was just observing. I don't work here, but he's just saying he went to do a view, and he was just looking. He's like, oh, these guys, like even the everything. He said when he was listening to the ads over the years, everything it all starts to sound the same when you think about it. And then when he went to the studio to do a VO, um, the writer actually said, "I've been working on this brand for the last 6 years." And alas, I think that's the other point in case for let people grow in different directions. And once again, fundamentals. If you're exposed to different brands, if you're taught the fundamentals, and you're given a chance to work on everything from um, you know, different categories, different jobs. I think that's the only way people grow. Yeah. So it's also how we're molded as as we come through the industry.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you brought up that point because and as well, when there's this thing we say that if it's not broken, don't fix it. So say something is already working for a brand, you've already come up with a campaign and it's working, the people are loving it, you're getting rave reviews in Copywriters Club for a hot item. So when you also run the risk of becoming stale and people, like just you said, one trick pony. So when is the right time to freshen things up and change things up, even if the client does not see it yet? But as an advertiser, as a creative, you see like, hey, we probably need to freshen things up with this brand.
Mm. Um, yeah, that's a really good question. I can't give you a tangible timeline, but then often, surprisingly, you actually see when you have a good enough relationship with your clients for them to actually be like, okay, this is how the ad performed, this is how the results were, this is how the brand is tracking. I feel like that's the most tangible way to be like, okay, fine, now let's refresh it, let's do another thematic. I think generally, if you're building a serious brand, uh, you almost, at least in terms of on campaign level, and if it's a sort of a medium to big brand, you want to do something thematic every 1.5, every 1.5 years about. You always have your tactical stuff happening, but I think depending on the context, number one, of where you are, because a lot of the time, if you don't have a new context, or you have um, you're just doing it because it's budget, so you're trying to just get something out of financial year, then it may not be necessary. I think be true to how the brand is tracking performance. It also just depends on the different, um, the specific marketing department. Once again, it's brand by brand. Um, but just be intuitive and listen. I don't. That's why I think research is actually useful, not in testing ads before, but in just saying, this is what I think about the brand, and actually incorporating that and saying, oh, okay, fine, the brand has come here. Then you know where to take it. The brand is, these are the salient aspects of the brand, and then now we know what we're either fixing, because that's the thing. A lot of briefs come in to fix something, or what we're building upon. Um, I think a lot of the time why we all get frustrated is because there are a lot of briefs that really have no objective. We're just getting them because someone somewhere feels like, I need to do something to just get my activity noticed before the end of the year.
Yeah.
And yeah, then we're all like, okay, but now what's the point? What are we really doing here? What are we communicating? At the heart of it.
Maybe away from brand fatigue, we go maybe to creative fatigue. You've worked the
Mm.
full year like we've done this year, and it takes a toll on you. Yeah? This is not
Mm.
me. This is not me complaining. This is just a question. And how then do you remain fresh? Because there's something that you said earlier about a guy in Roysambu, lives from Roysambu to work every day. And then you tell him to advertise KLM or, what Emirates Airways. You want him to imagine all these amazing things, yet he's never been there. How then do you as a creative tap into something that you might never even get the time, to go there and enjoy?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the guy who told me about the whole balancing wasn't even in creative. Number one, I think obviously, especially mental health and things are very, very individual. Everyone has a different bandwidth. There's some guys who are war hardened. Guys can work for years and never get tired, but there are other people who can just do sprints, and they burn out, or they really get stretched to their limits quickly. However, just generally, this guy was actually worked for one of the insurance companies that was kind of like doing the insurance for one of the agencies I worked with. And he came in. He wasn't selling anything. He was just saying, look, I've been the insurance guy for agencies for many years, and he was just observing and saying that, look, he's seen this. He's seen the attrition rate, and just the effect of the lifestyle and the pace that this industry actually pushes people at. And he said, be very intentional, and be very intentional and guard that regeneration and that space time. And he literally said, don't really avoid, and he wasn't from a tia and an uncle point of view. It's just like he's seen it. Avoid self-destructive things because it's easy to it's like a elastoplast in terms of when you it's self-destructive habits or drinking drugs, whatever it is, um, may kind of like feel like they're doing the job in the short term, even if it's like poor eating, whatever it is. But he just said basically like guard that, yeah, guard that, and when you find a productive way to blow off steam because you all need it, then you'll be able to number one create better work, and number two you won't burn out. Because his whole thing was creative people get sick all the time, rather agency people get sick all the time. And this guy was just saying he's seen it. It's just like, yo, guys, find whatever it is, whether it's sports, whether it's trips, whether it's reading, music, a hobby, a creative outlet. Because funny enough, a lot of people also uh, put a lot of value on the creative output of what we do from our 9 to 5, when Zero Tills TV is a very noble, very interesting creative pursuit. Probably even more creative fulfilling than the 15 e-shots and 10 scripts I know you wrote between yesterday at 4 p.m. and today. Like,
How
yeah,
did you
man. What do you value? Yeah, so if you find a way to now shift that value to and switch that point of view to find productive ways and really um keep a cap on how much what we do means to how much you value your self-esteem or your output or your creative like impact, then I think it can be a sustainable career. Otherwise, it takes a lot from people, whether you're on the creative side or the account side. We've seen people who just it's not an easy place to be.
amazing? Say that I wonder sometimes. Sure, we're in a, we are in an industry where we're judged. Our value is judged by the kind of work that we produce, and I'm sure by the number of years of your experience, you had your own way of blowing off steam. I want to know what was your weakness. Yeah, for me, I'll start with mine. So, because in the spirit of full disclosure,
It's a safe space,
conflict
okay.
of opinion, mine was not client service, but it was food. I used to eat, but because of I used to eat and work in a high pressure environment, I used to burn a lot of metabolism as well. So that's why it explains my body weight. What about you?
I feel like you're eating mogoka. That's the only plausible. That does not count as a food. Um, I think my thing was definitely it shifted. I think because at one point we had a bar in the office, so like we used to drink a lot. Um, our Wednesdays were like open bar nights, or Thursdays were just long days, and then Fridays as well. So definitely at one point, like drinking became just quite regular and quite heavy. Yeah, aside from that, it's just usual. I've always had a curious mind, so I've always fed my mind, whether it's with movies, music, reading, golf, gym. Gym became a serious one for me. Gym actually really came through because I'd literally go every lunchtime. It even became a problem with each other. Like, you guys,
Yes.
are you a gym instructor or you're a copywriter?
Yes.
But gym really helped me out. I think between gym, because I'm that guy as well. I like working hard and playing hard. I just think there was like a year there where I may have played hard more than I worked hard. So funny stories now. When I was resigning from one job, no, it was banter, but also, my boss then told me, like, because I wrote this a very nice, elaborate, funny, witty resignation letter, and he's like, okay, do you really want to leave? I'm like, man, I just have to move on. And he said, I wish your copywriting was as good as the copywriting in your letter. And it was like it was a soft punch, but I also think banter is the lifeblood of agencies, and it just keeps us on our toes, keeps us laughing, and I actually think that's another way to blow off steam. And I think that's why a lot of people miss the office environment. For those people like watching, like Ashio literally had like a waiting room of client service people, not just for work, but just for storos and jokes.
Trauma.
You know what I mean?
Kuna trauma. like Homer.
next to next to in his area. And I feel like it's a beautiful thing when you're actually around people who are equally, you know, it actually helps talking to people and laughing with people and sharing, and you actually become friends. And I think that's one of the biggest downsides of this remote working story, because we're just a lot of the time in our homes, and it gets overwhelming. You just talk to people through this um, screen, and bad connections. You don't even have time for jokes. It's just like, oh man, the grind it speeds up so much. So
Great. Now, right now you're no longer, you right now we could say that you're in management because you're in charge of a creative team. How then do you let your creative team know that they're not defined by their jobs? Because I know you can relate that a lot of times, especially in this industry, if you are not producing up to standard work, you either take it out on yourself and you start feeling some type of way towards yourself. You even lock yourself away in the house. And especially now that a lot of creatives are alone, and you're, like you said, you're not in the office where you could do banter where someone could just slap you and, the day goes on well. Right now you're alone, and you are required to output. So then how then when you produce bad work or your work is not up to standard, how then do you, remind yourself that this is not me and I'm separate from my work? And how, as a creative head, how do you guide your team against similar feelings?
that's a great question. And you see, truth be told, I mean, if we're being brutally honest now, I think even in the role I'm doing right now.
Yes, we we
Is
are
that on
together.
my end?
We are together. Yeah.
I wish that was like my theme music in life. Oh, sorry, that's me. Can you hear that? My bad. I don't
No,
know.
we can't hear you. Sadly, we cannot hear you.
Sorry. I pressed play by mistake. That's hilarious, man. I thought it was like real life theme music. So, um, to be told, this is something I've actually set myself personal goals in terms of the next year to be more present, just more empathetic as a supervisor and a team member, because guilty. I think this year has been especially hard in terms of managing that clash between, okay, fine, people are home, but then the turnover of work. It's easy to forget that actually there are a lot of people who are going through the motions. And I don't think we should just leave it to HR as management. I think the old thing of the same way people leave bosses, not jobs, is the same way. Um, I really want to up my engagement with my team and even just people in the agency, and just being more human, because it can only lead to good. Yeah. I It's a learning curve for sure. But yeah, just even I think one of our colleagues, his mom was very sick this week, and people are calling him, just literally, and finally he answered, and I was just like, yo man, how's your mom? But the guy is just like, yo, I was literally scared to pick up because me, I thought I was being asked for briefs. But truth be told, the question was like, no, no, how's your mom doing? Because you took a couple of days of leave. So for someone to jump to that conclusion just says that, we're definitely operating at the wrong wavelength in terms of humanity. So I think that's a big shift that we have to make. And it just leads to, I'm not saying it's the end game, but it will actually lead to better work, because people feel safe, it's a safe space. And you don't love it, creatives, uh, and people in agencies generally are sensitive creatures, man. So when you build that trust, it just generally leads to people sharing more, people being more open, people being more creative. So yeah, that's a big one for me for the next year. I'm actually excited to take that journey on a deeper level.
Yeah, amazing. Hopefully, you can hire some of us or some of our viewers who are watching.
Yeah.
Everyone is looking for the next big gig.
Karibu Uganda, Sebo. Come after people have stopped rioting.
How is your Luganda, by the way? It sounds terrible, but how is it?
It's good, man. It's good. I think, in any country, this election period, it's what, 2 months out? So It's it's tense, man. But uh, yeah, man, it's one of it's bigger than us in terms of it's something that unfortunately I think if you watch Softy or whatever, it's such a relevant conversation in terms of our relationship to politics in Africa. We're still finding that we're still finding you know uh, productive identity, because right now it's always destructive, it's always one way, it's always yeah, and I think it's still a long way to go, man. Yeah, the fact that it's something we all put in our calendars, we just know election nikubaya, like we just know it's a rite of, yeah, that's not normal, that's really awful, man. I mean, the states went through a super contentious election now, and it's okay, yes, it's still contentious, but it wasn't like, hey, the year is over, nikubaya. So I think we all have a part to play in that in terms of democracy and voting and choosing leaders. But yeah, that's beyond wheelbarrows, hustlers, and dynasties.
As we come to maybe a close of this insightful conversation, and I'm not just saying that, unajua umenizoea vibaya, but I actually mean it. We have a question from Johnny, who is asking, what do you regret most in your career? Other than the fact that you didn't work with me long enough, what else?
Right? I'm sorry for leaving you, Sensei. I shall find my way back home. um, what do I regret most?
Yes.
Uh, I think. hmm, Once again, truth be told, I I wish I learned to, I wish I was more proactive with my learning and growth, because I definitely had a few lucky turns, and I was very kichwangumu. So I think, I would have just literally achieved much more, and had quite a few, like much less heartburn if I was just a bit more humble. If I had like a listening and learning mentality from the get go, not even achieved more, just it would have made across the board work would have been better. I would have learned faster. Things have worked out great so far. I think in itself those led to some hard lessons.
Yes.
But in hindsight, I think I would have the journey would have been much easier, much quicker, um, if I had it that way. I was just very, proper bush warfare, man. So I think it's not. I think it's also a personality thing. Some people are more aggressive, pushy. Some people are more calm. But then now with age and like just a bit more maturity, I wish I had that approach.
As we say back in Kenya, our homeland, it's never too late. You can always learn how to drink milk. Now,
Yes, 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 yes. Love it. I'm gonna drop that in a
yes.
Zoom meeting on Monday. Love it.
What's as a creative looking, or rather, as a creative who is right in the thick of things, especially in Uganda and no longer serving a larger market, what do you think is missing in our industry, and what are you doing about it?
Industry in terms of in Kenya or in just as in advertising.
In the advertising industry?
What do I think is missing? I think there's I sense that maybe it's the environment. There's a distinct lack of passion and fight. There's a lot of apathy. I would say is the word, and justifiably so, because it can be a frustrating process for a lot of people and a lot of agencies. A lot of guys are tired, and there's just a lot of complaining and fatigue. And funny enough, people, it's strangely addictive. Um, but I think it'd be good to see people have just a bit more hope and a bit more fun. Um, because I'm not saying fight blindly, but I think when you have fun doing work, and even for me, this was a learning curve. I think this year alone, I learned to go back to the simple thing of having fun when I'm creating the work, whether it's a small brief or big brief. No worry about the outcome or client buy it. Will I have to? No, just literally have fun, and I feel like it shines through. So in fact, yeah, I think have a few still doing work for Kenya, and I think the job that we actually had fun doing as a team and even selling to our clients actually bought. And it's work that, we would say by their standards is actually out there. But that, that fun makes everything easier. It makes our threshold for stress easier. It makes our, it means that we have less conflict in terms of our work relationships. Yeah, I just think a lot of people feel burned and waking up and being like, now what next? I don't know what. I have to fight with people. I have to, yeah. So for me, on a personal level, I think that fun has made it easier getting to, creating good work, and just even actually enjoying the job again. Yeah, because there were moments when it just became a lot of, angst and felt like a burden and now what? Clients are like this, and internally I have to like push this through. Um, So I think that let's also share our work as creatives, because I think the more we put our work out there and share our work, then we know what's happening. Then we feel like there's a sense of industry. I feel like right now, there are a few art directors, copywriters club, whatever. I like what you're doing because you're hearing creative voices and you're like, people actually have the same or even different opinions, and I think that's only a good thing. Work only improves from there, and you feel like, I'm doing what I'm doing. Um, Number one, okay, it's just advertising, yes, but it has meaning, and it's also like we hold ourselves accountable. We hold ourselves accountable to a certain level of work, and so even when we're in boardroom selling to our clients, we're not just being. It's not a walkover. We also feel like, this is bigger than me. Let me do my best just for everyone's sanity, man. So I think that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, you've said something which was going to lead into my next question. So I think Wacha could jump the gun. I'm playing.
Uh-huh.
Now, I wanted to ask, but I've seen another question has coming from Kevin Oak. I think you remember him. Kevo Adredi.
Yeah, man. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes, yes,
Mr.
he's
Boga,
asking
how you?
Mr. Apoga. How does your previous team handle analytics and reporting?
I guess is that in the context? If that's in the context of social media, um, it's truth be told, it's isolated from. It's isolated from the work. I think only now, with one of our clients, we're actually looping in the feedback that comes in, usually live, through Twitter, through our ads, and then we even now either we literally we've spun off certain things in a campaign using that information, but to be told, it's been very isolated before, to the point of these reports are just go to clients to make them happy. So that's been a big gap. Um, but I think recently we found it, useful and actually enlightening because you actually get an idea of where the gaps are, the quality of your content. Because some days, I think recently we've done a couple of campaigns where, and I'm just pretty out there, but then, you maybe get people are like, okay, fine, good ad, but your product sucks. Now this is something you have to take back to your client. Um, very gently and mention it. So even when we now are reviewing the campaign or moving on to the next phase of the campaign, it's something we can handle and even help them handle. So that's been an interesting learning curve, and it's something we do actively now.
Amazing, amazing. Finally, oh wow, tumepita time threshold, and I know your internet is taxed. I don't want you to be broke. Internet. Yeah?
Yeah, I want to refund my friend one.
Please tell you are going above budget. My last question will be: do you think this work matters? Because I know you raised some valid points where you talked about we need to have an industry, but sometimes you sit down in your house and you're like, you stare at the ceiling. This is not what I do, and ask yourself, does this work really matter?
I think that's the biggest these existential things, man. In terms of, I think by the time people feel like they need to get and we all, this is the way the world today, we all get a sense of validation from what we do in terms of our career. And I, truth be told, I think once again it's your value system, and just being realistic and making that gap, because at the end of the day, it's a job like any other. Many people have jobs that are less gratifying in terms of actually using your mind and coming up with a fun concept and impacting businesses and even having a voice in culture and society at its best. um, so, I used to struggle with that a few years ago. That thing of I lose sleep at night. Nowadays, I go home and, like mentally now, it's Friday, 6 p.m. I don't mind putting in extra hours, but I've learned to switch off. I've literally learned to, you know, I sleep very well. I sleep for 8 hours. Um, but so I don't let that spill over. I just know that at the end of the day, it's a job, and for me, yes, I'd love to do great work, but I also want to impact the people around me is something I've really enjoyed recently, and I've told you I really want to focus on next year. But yeah, I does it have meaning? It's a very thinking man sort of question of, it depends on you. You give everything around you, everything in your life meaning. Um, and I've found that definitely a sense of meaning at this stage, even if it's meaning as a hopping stone. I know some people who've been in this industry because they know they're getting two things out of it, and they know they're here for 5 years and you go. They know they're here for 2 years and you go. In itself, that's meaning. Um, so if you're in it for the long haul, definitely it's a harder question. If you're like, I'm gonna give my life to this advertising thing, yeah. But for everyone, it's a different. Um, it's a different scale. But once again, I just think it's healthy to give it a decent level of stoicism and accept that it is just a job. At its best, you can do pretty good things. You can make an impact. You can create work that will, it will live for some time, and it's much more than a lot of people get to do with their careers. Um, but meaning in terms of everything in life, your life needs to revolve around it, and you lose sleep. It's something I don't buy into. Yeah, I choose to look at life from a wider lens, personally.
Amazing, amazing balls. Before I let you go, the questions keep on coming. Which kind of writing do you for yourself? There's some who like writing print ads, which thankfully they're dead. I'm not supposed to say that as an advertising guy. And this one, how
Kuchoma,
do you
kuchoma
like to
in
write
life.
Nachoma, preferably like writing radios, which I think is also a dying medium. And what do you think of podcasts, for creatives? How then are we as creatives, how would you tell us to adapt to these new forms of advertising, or rather these new forms of media that are coming along to be able to stay ahead of the competition? Because all the time we think print first, this is something that gets ingrained in us until what is the print art? That is the only thing you think about. How are then
Yeah.
as creatives, as younger creatives, we supposed to start now, evolving with the current times? And as much as you said advertising is not changing, but you also need to, stay ahead of the times. You don't get caught out.
So I think one big step is if I in summary one big step is for me keeping abreast with the different forms,
Yes.
because in fact for me literally I think early on in my career I said it was kind of like facetious. It was as on a light note, it was flippant. I was like, I don't like writing. I used to find it tedious at one point, and that's early on I really appreciated the craft and everything. But two people got to when I'm like, I just like ideas. I just like coming up with ideas and packaging them and like selling them and seeing where they come to life. And the craft is part of it. Don't get it like twisted. I love craft, especially even the mediums like radio that a lot of people are wishy-washy about. I love craft. But sometimes I sometimes I wish, when you do all these elaborate decks and pictures, I wish you could sometimes sell the one piece, the one activation that we actually feel like will be the standout piece, or the one radio ad, or um, the one interesting hybrid idea that is like, oh, we want to plug in this into an app so that we, and yeah, this thing of hiding behind layouts and whatever. I think it also limits us mentally because we forget that an idea can shine in any form and can even have more impact on business in an unexpected form. That it can be that. I think that the loving of mediums is inbuilt to that because you're all, no matter what, you're curious, and you see, okay, there's this business, this is a potential channel, and I think we've just seen such good work from brands like Sanlam where you're doing a WhatsApp dramedy, and that craft will come in, but just the idea of taking that leap started from what if we just did this one thing, and they never had a key visual for those campaigns, and I think we get stuck on that. So sometimes I actually I wish we had the kahunas as agents to go in and say, yo, actually today we're bringing you branded masks. Actually today we're bringing you signs on trees. Today we're bringing you, a platform that records your voice and makes it like, a unique ringtone that can be on, whatever it is. But then I think it gets a bit tedious, or less, as you say, having to start with, okay, headline, hey, and then now, 10 of those, and then we move. And it's one of my beefs, truth be told. I find it tedious. In terms of craft, I say craft the hell out of things because there's nothing better than getting into the zone and craft elevating work. But that's always going to be subsequent to what form or what shape can this idea take in. And I don't think that should ever be limited. But yeah, practice all the craft you can. Look at the grades. And that's the thing with craft. You can only get better by doing it. You can only get better at writing radio scripts by writing radio scripts, or writing headlines by opening a Word document and writing 20, and then looking at how Neil French used to write headlines. I remember I had a Jungu CD, just Jungu CD, and he beat it into me, and now the craft comes naturally, but it's just practice. Any sport, any gym. That's my take on craft. Just practice, you get good. But I think what now stands out and elevates people is can you actually package the big idea and sell it and mold it and shape it and evolve it. I think now that's when okay, fine, cool. Some people are meant for just really good crafting. Yeah, but if you can always start from that elevated idea point of view, I think you go far.
Amazing. I don't want to add any more to that because I will spoil the soup that you've created. The good thing you said is that as a creative, always ask yourself, what if, don't be conformed by print ads. I have a natural tendency to hate print ads. I really hate
it. Man.
Hey. That was Allan Mwaniki. You may know him as the guy from Uganda. He used to ride bikes before he discovered other. Let me watch my time. I've forgotten that you're still live. I'm starting here to talk banter. Now,
hey, Friday 6 p.m. banter it begins. Before you used to ride what? PG. It's a PG show.
Yeah, there are children watching and saying, I want to be like this guy. Me, not you now.
Well played.
It was fun talking to you and, hearing insights now from Allan Mwaniki, the creative head. It's been a long time, and I also wanted to end the show with giving the ladies a treat. They've been complaining, you're bringing guys who just look like advertising. So I said, let me look at the other end of the spectrum. Someone who is easy on the eye. So, Allan, I don't know if there's anything else you want to tell anyone out there. If you want to apologize for something you told me while you're in Kenya, this is your opportunity.
Yeah, I'm sorry for all the typos. I know I still owe you lunch. Shout out. Yeah, man. All the creatives. I think this is really cool what you're doing. So also big ups to you. And yeah, let's keep on creating, man. Let's keep on creating. It's what we do.
Amen. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Kevo. Kevo by then Dr. Futa. Kevo Oak. He was a good guy. He's still a good guy, I think. Not talk for now.
Yeah. We also have a discussion to have, Kevin.
Yes. Okay. So thank you for everyone who's tuned in to today's show. Of course, as usual, we'll share the snippets of this interview with the amazing Allan Mwaniki. If you want to find him, he's not on social media, so you might have to go to Uganda. Ama, how do they find you?
Karibu UG, karibu UG.
And give out your email. Or WhatsApp number. I'll put the WhatsApp number to, if you make it worth my while. So thank you guys for tuning in. See you next Friday. Toodles.
Thanks, Kibo. Cheers.